culture, and events. The New York Times described Mario Cuomo's tenure as New York State Governor as one of the lengthiest and most celebrated governorships in recent history. However, what you may not know is that he's also the author of several books, including a popular children's story entitled The Blue Spruce. Mr. Cuomo recently paid a visit to Princeton, New Jersey, where he discussed the inspiration for the Blue Spruce.
Ladies and gentlemen, Barnes & Noble is very proud and very happy to present the author of The Blue Spruce, Governor Mario Cuomo.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Has anybody here read The Blue Spruce? Really? Did you enjoy it? It's a children's book. I love these children with white mustaches. Things have changed. I'm sorry to have almost been late. It was Jersey traffic. It wasn't New York traffic. And I don't know exactly how to go about this. I could read The Blue Spruce to you, but I don't think I'll do that. I'm not sure I'd do it justice tonight. I want you to know that something was left out of Nancy's very generous introduction of me, and that is the fact that actually Mario Cuomo's life, the first Mario Cuomo's life in my family, started in New Jersey, Jersey City, New Jersey. My father came from a place called Tramonti in Provincia di Salerno in Italy. And my mother was from the same town, only she was from the mountains north of his particular town, which was Nucera Inferiore, and she was from Tramonti in the mountains. He was actually Nucera Inferiore. He came to Jersey City. And he came, my mother followed him, as many of the Italians and other immigrants did in those days, with a son, Frank, my oldest brother. Then they had Mario, and then they had Marie. And Mario died at the age of 2 in Jersey City, New Jersey. And I wasn't aware of this. I thought it was verboten to name a second child in the family after a deceased child, but my mother felt differently about it. In the Depression of 1929, he, as a ditch digger, lost his job. There was no more work. There was no construction work. He worked, incidentally, on, I think it was Holy Rosary Church in Jersey City. He was one of the laborers. I know that because a congressman some years later, when they were celebrating, I think, the 70 or 65th anniversary of Holy Rosary Church, I forget which, had a picture in the files of a construction gang that had worked on it, and had the names of the people in the construction gang, and one of them was Andrea Cuomo. And I was governor at the time in New York, and he thought, just perchance, it's not that usual a name, Cuomo. He said maybe it was a relative, and he wrote me a note. And when I told Mama, when I brought the picture home, it was indeed my father. Papa had by then passed on. So we started in Jersey City, but I entered the family in a place called South Jamaica, Queens. It was in the midst of that depression, with no help at all for him. Because remember, in those years there was no welfare, there was no Social Security, there was no unemployment insurance, there was no Medicare, there was no Medicaid. And my mother and he had come here with no education. They hadn't been to school a day in Italy. They had no education here, no skills, no friends. They had nothing but their willingness to work hard, which they did. And so when they were out of work with 3 children in Jersey City, New Jersey, no skills, no friends, they were very close to despair. My mother, until very recently, because she died at 93 a couple of years ago, would tell the story about how she felt, how completely abandoned they felt in this great new world to which they had come looking forward to, the streets paved with gold and all of that, and discovering that the streets weren't all paved with gold, and as a matter of fact, they were expected to do the paving. And even then, there was no job for them. And out of the heavens came a miracle called Ruby and Harry Kessler, a Jewish couple in South Jamaica, Queens. He had a grocery store in South Jamaica, in the tenement district, the poorest district of South Jamaica. You know the area south of the railroad tracks, down by the junkyards. Not even in the project community, where at least they built projects for poor people. These were all tenements. And Mr. Kessler had a bad heart, couldn't work, needed someone to work in the store in the Depression. And a man by the name of Angelo Lamarca, who happened to come from the same paese as my father, was a customer in the store. They talked once, and he says, you know, there's a couple that came from my town that's in trouble in Jersey City, New Jersey. And maybe if you can give them a place to live, they had a big room behind the store. Maybe they can do the work for you, and maybe you can work something out. And Mr. Kessler said, well, that would be great for me. He said, I can't pay them a lot of money, but I give them the one big room that had a toilet in it, which had to be partitioned off, but it was, and a big black stone sink. And they can wash their clothes, and they can wash themselves with a rag. We don't have a tub, and they have a toilet facility, and we can arrange for them to sleep there, and they can work there. He says, well, one problem, they don't read or write English. He said, don't worry about that. Nobody here in the neighborhood, we have Portuguese. Forget about it. We all talk with our hands anyway. And Mom and Papa came to this store. Imagine that. Imagine sleeping in your own little space that you made with curtains from whatever materials you could make. You know, you just draped them on ropes, and then in the other space, Marie, and then in the last space, Frankie, and then about a year and a half later, they have a son, another son. Great blessing to my mother. She said, no matter how bad it was, you know, the idea that God sent me another son was such a miracle. It buoyed our spirits. And that was myself. And I was born on a table delivered by a midwife behind the store. We never had a child in my family delivered by a nurse. My mother had never been to a hospital until she got to be over 90. She was never in a hospital. Imagine. Wonderful. And she was back in the store, they tell me, I'm not sure this is true. She was back in the store the day after she had me. And that's where I come from. You can imagine how grateful I am for all those people did. And just consider what they did do. And I wouldn't spend this much time on it if these were the only people in American history who behaved this way and succeeded this way, but they were like millions and millions of others who came almost precisely the same way. There were small differences. It wasn't New Jersey. It might have been a different part of the country. They weren't Italian. Maybe they were Polish or Greek or Egyptian or Jewish from Lubavitch, wherever they were from. These people with so little, with such tremendous odds to deal with nothing going for them except a Jewish couple that was kind to them and willing to, bit by bit, teach them the language as they were working in the store. A generation later, only a generation later, their son becomes governor of the state of New York for 3 terms. I couldn't... Well, I take it you're applauding for Mama and Papa, and that's beautiful, and they deserve it, and all those people deserve it. And so I grow up that way. And how'd I get to